Hello everyone. Hi. Online students, I hope I'm audible to you. We are going to continue with our modern history RTFQ session. This is the fourth set of 50 questions that we are going to discuss from number 151 to 200. Right? The topic once again is the national movement. Now let us look at these questions one by one and see if we can address them. Question number 151. Consider the following statements with reference to Gandhi's struggle against authorities in South Africa. Number 1. He started a paper, Young India, to give voice to Indians. Is this correct? Incorrect. What was the name of Mahatma Gandhi's weekly in South Africa? It was Indian Opinion. Number 2. He formed the Passive Resistance Association to conduct campaign against registration certificates. Is this correct? Yes, this is correct. Now, there were two organizations established by Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa, one being the Passive Resistance Association and the other being the Natal Indian Congress. Established in 1894 and the Passive Resistance Association established in 1906. Okay. Third, he demanded the abolition of poll tax imposed on ex-indentured laborers. This is also correct. Now, a number of Indian laborers migrated to South Africa as plantation or mine labor, right? They had gone there as per indentureship contracts. However, once those contracts ended, they were free to leave their occupation and live like common people. But the British government of South Africa had recently brought a law saying that all such laborers would have to pay a poll tax of £3. Right? So this was unjust. Mahatma Gandhi, through the Passive Resistance Association, demonstrated against this, and it was successfully repealed. So which of these are not correct? The answer should be one only. So please make the correction in your क्वेश्चन पेपर्स. ऑप्शन दिया नहीं हुआ है यहाँ पर. इट इज वन ओनली. राइट. कमिंग टू द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन 152. नंबर 1. कंसिडर द फॉलोइंग स्टेटमेंट्स रिगार्डिंग खेड़ा सत्याग्रह. नंबर 1. It was the first non-cooperation movement in which Gandhiji asked farmers not to pay taxes. So, 3 early Gandhian satyagrahas in India कौन कौन से? Champaran, Kheda and Ahmedabad. Kheda satyagrah was the first act of Gandhian non-cooperation in India. What was the issue over here? The continuation of tax collection even after a severe crop failure had occurred, right? Mahatma Gandhi felt that it was illegitimate for the government to continue this. The peasants of the Kheda region were also agitating. Therefore, he convinced the peasants not to pay taxes. So, this was the first act of non-cooperation. This is correct. Second, Indulal Yagnik joined Gandhiji in touring the villages. Is this correct? So, in this particular satyagraha, he was accompanied by 2 prominent other leaders. One was Indulal Yagnik, the other was Sardar Patel. So, this is also correct. Third, as a result of the movement, the government agreed to suspend tax and return all the confiscated property. Is this correct? So finally, the government had to back down because of the pressure that was being created by the popular upsurge, and all the tax collection activities were suspended, and confiscated property, if it had already not been auctioned off, that was returned. So this is also correct. Number 4, The cultivators who could afford to pay were also asked not to pay, as the poorer ryots would sell off their belongings in order to pay the revenue. Is this correct? So this is also correct. Now see, the Kheda Satyagrah, in the beginning Mahatma Gandhi had given the call for non-cooperation, which in this particular context meant non-payment of taxes. Now there were several different categories of peasants, some of them richer ones, some of them poorer ones. The richer ones obviously had the capability to pay the taxes, but because Mahatma Gandhi wanted to unite all the peasants behind a common agenda, he advised even those with the ability to pay not to pay tax for two reasons. One, to pressurize the government, and second, to prevent panic from setting in among the poorer peasants, so that they do not sell off their belongings to pay the tax, fearing that if they do not do that, the government might confiscate their property. ठीक है, so क्या पूछा है यहाँ पे? Which of the above are correct? Answer is all four. Statement third: as a result of the movement, government agreed to suspend the tax and return all the confiscated property. So it was very common for the government to confiscate property for non-payment of taxes, right? The government had been doing this from the very beginning. So that only will be returned, but in the context of this statement वो ठीक है कि अगर नहीं ऑक्शन हुआ है तो उसको हम रिटर्न कर देंगे. That is correct. So correct answer over here is 1, 2, 3 and 4. Next question, number 153. With reference to Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act 1919 enacted by the British Indian government, consider the following statements. Number 1. All the elected members of the Imperial Legislative Council voted in support of this bill. Now this bill is better known as, this act is better known as the Rowlatt Act. Did all the elected members of the Indian Legislative Council, Central Legislative Council, accept this? They did not support it. In fact, many prominent members even resigned against this act in protest, such as Madan Mohan Malviya, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Mazharul Haq. So these three prominent leaders resigned from the Imperial Legislative Council in protest against the act, in protest against this bill. Second, the law of habeas corpus was sought to be suspended under this act. Yes, so this is correct. Now this act provided for preventive detention of any Indian only on the basis of suspicion of seditious activities for a period of 2 years without trial. So the writ of habeas corpus was effectively suspended by this act. So this statement is correct. Third, Gandhi called for a mass protest against the act at an all India level. Is this correct? Yes. This is known as the Rowlatt Satyagraha, right? It was the first all India strike launched by Mahatma Gandhi in India. Which of these statements given above is or are correct? D, 2 and 3 only. Next question, 154. With reference to the Champaran Satyagraha, consider the following statements. Number 1. It was the first instance of Gandhian civil disobedience in India. This is correct. What do you understand by the term civil disobedience? The willful but civil violation of unjust laws. So which law was to be violated over here? The contracts which were being enforced upon the Indian peasants by the British indigo planters. These were legal documents, unko violate karna hai, right? So this statement is correct. Second, Rajkumar Shukla persuaded Mahatma Gandhi ji to come to Champaran. Is this correct? This is also correct. Who was Rajkumar Shukla? He was a local peasant from Champaran who was persuading Mahatma Gandhi to come to Champaran and alleviate the suffering of the peasants over there. What was their biggest problem? Issue क्या था चंपारण सत्याग्रह में? The तीन कठिया system. Right. Third, it resulted in abolishing the Teen Kathia system and released cultivators from the obligation of cultivating indigo. Is this correct? So this is also correct. What do you understand by the term Teen Kathia? That they would have to the indigo farmers who have entered into such contracts with the indigo planters from Britain, they would have to grow indigo on 3/20ths of their land. Thus the name Teen Kathia system. Okay? And number 4, the government appointed a committee to inquire into the whole issue and Gandhiji was nominated as its member. This is also correct. An inquiry commission was appointed and Gandhi was made a member. It recommended that the Teen Kathia system should be abolished and no farmer should be forced to grow any crop against his wishes. What were the problems with indigo plantation in the 1920s in the 20th century? Soil degradation of soil, decreasing profitability, increasing burden on the peasants which was being shifted on them by the indigo planters. It was leading to water scarcity, labor scarcity, etc. Okay? So which of these statements given above is or are correct? All are correct. Answer is D, all of the above. Number 155. Which of the following was or were not the outcomes of the Congress Nagpur session of 1920? Number 1. C.R. Das moved the main resolution of non-cooperation. Is this correct or incorrect? This is correct. So C.R. Das moved the non-cooperation resolution. Who seconded this resolution? Not Mahatma Gandhi. It was Motilal Nehru. Now this is significant because in the special session held at Calcutta in September 1920, C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru had objected to the non-cooperation movement. Okay? They had not supported the non-cooperation resolution. लेकिन 4 महीने के बाद जब ये दोबारा से प्रेजेंट किया गया, C.R. Das moved the motion and Motilal Nehru seconded it. ठीक है? Why? Because earlier they did not believe that non-violent satyagraha was an effective tool of mass mobilization or to pressurize the government. Now, in these 3 months, the non-cooperation movement had proved to be quite successful and they were wholly convinced of its effectiveness. So they emerged as its biggest supporters. Clear? Second, a committee of 15 members was set up and the Congress committed itself for extra constitutional mass struggle. Is this correct? So at the Nagpur session, Congress got a new constitution which set up a Congress working committee of 15 members to act as the day-to-day executive high-level body of the Congress. Till now, the Congress had committed itself to the use of only and only constitutional methods of struggle. Now, it said that it would use extra constitutional but non-violent methods. So this is also correct. Third, C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru resigned from the presidency and from the post of secretary respectively from the Congress. Is this correct in the case of the Nagpur session? No. ये कब हुआ? गया session 1922 में. So which of these क्या पता करना है हमको? Not correct. So which of these are not correct? C, 3 only. Which of the following newspapers was started by Mahatma Gandhi? Indian Opinion. कहाँ पे? इंडिया में या साउथ अफ्रीका में? साउथ अफ्रीका में. Number 157. Which of the following sets of newspapers reflected the concerns of the educated Indian Muslims during the Khilafat movement? Comrade and Hamdard, Comrade and Hindustan Times, Zamindar and Muslim Voice, Comrade, Hamdard, Zamindar and Al Hilal. D. सारे हैं ये. ठीक है? Comrade and Hamdard were the newspapers of Maulana Muhammad Ali Jauhar. Zamindar was a newspaper published by मौलाना जफर अली खान. While Al Hilal was the Urdu newspaper of Maulana Azad, and these newspapers played a very important role in mobilizing the Indian Muslim masses during the Khilafat non-cooperation movement. ठीक. Number 158, which of the following statements about Bhagat Singh is or are not true? ठीक है. Number 1, Bhagat Singh was influenced by socialist ideas. Correct. 1928 में जब HRA रिकॉन्स्टिट्यूट हुआ, इट वाज नेम्ड HSRA, हिंदुस्तान सोशलिस्ट रिपब्लिकन एसोसिएशन और आर्मी, राइट. In fact, Bhagat Singh had completely redefined the idea of revolution, saying that a true revolution cannot be brought about until and unless all systems which make the exploitation of man by man possible are eradicated. He was deeply influenced by the socialist ideas as had been demonstrated during the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay? So he considered imperialism and capitalism to be equally responsible for the suffering and oppression of Indians. पहला वाला सही है. Second, he was member of the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. This is correct. Third statement, Bhagat Singh threw a bomb in the Central Legislative Assembly in 1929 with the objective to kill as many people as possible. This is false. This is incorrect. सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली में बॉम्ब किसने किसने फेंका था? एक तो भगत सिंह और दूसरा बटुकेश्वर दत्त, राइट. व्हाई हैड दे थ्रोन द बॉम्ब? The bomb were deliberately made harmless. They were all smoke and sound. कोई shrapnel नहीं था. They had no destructive potential. They were also thrown on the empty seats of the Central Legislative Assembly. ठीक है, ये नहीं कि जहां पे मेंबर बैठे हैं उनके बीच में फेंक दिया हो. The idea was to make the deaf hear. Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt planned to get themselves arrested so that they could use the public trials that would follow as a platform to air their ideas about socialism and the real meaning of Indian freedom. Right? They had also bombed the Central Legislative Assembly in protest against two bills that it was discussing at that point of time. कौन से bills? The Public Safety Bill and the Trade Disputes Bill. ठीक है. So which of these are correct? कौन सा नहीं है? 3 only. Number 159. Which of the following statements about the Champaran Satyagraha is or are correct? Number 1. The Champaran region had a long tradition of anti-planter discontent and agitation. Is this correct or incorrect? Yes. So the farmers at Champaran had been dealing with the Teen Kathia issue for a very long period of time, ever since the 1860s. 1860 में आपको याद होगा एक इंडिगो रेबेलियन हुआ था. That had affected which part of India? Bengal only. After that, although indigo plantation had ended in Bengal, but it had started in eastern UP and Bihar. और चंपारण के peasants के ऊपर ये तीन कठिया सिस्टम तभी से इम्पोज था. It had been causing problems for them for a very long period, and they had been agitating against it continuously as well, but to no avail. Second, Mahatma Gandhi gave all India publicity to the grievances of Champaran cultivators. Is this correct? Now, the biggest advantage of Mahatma Gandhi getting involved in the Tinkathia issue at Champaran was that since he was such a big leader, the media followed him, and the issue of Champaran farmers, which was a regional local issue, suddenly got all India publicity and also generated a lot of anti-colonial feeling and pro-peasant sentiment among the general masses of India. So this is correct. Third, the cultivators of Champaran had protested against excessive taxation on sugar. Was sugar excessive taxation issue? This is incorrect. The Tinkathia system was the issue. So which of these are correct? B, 1 and 2 only. Number 160. Where and when did Mahatma Gandhi first use his method of hunger strike to achieve a desired goal? At Ahmedabad in the year 1918. So Ahmedabad mill strike mein, it was the first Gandhian instance of hunger strike in India. What was the issue over here? The industrial workers in the Ahmedabad cotton mills were demanding the continuation of the plague bonus that they had been receiving since the First World War that had recently been discontinued. ठीक है? So Mahatma Gandhi got involved in this issue. He advised the workers to go on a strike and himself went on a hunger strike. ठीक है? So the answer is C. Next question. Which of the following acts reserved seats for women in legislatures in accordance with the allocation of seats for different communities? What was the principle for allocation of seats for different communities? Separate electorate, communal electorate. तो सेपरेट इलेक्ट्रेट पूछ रहा है विमेन को कब दिया गया, बताओ. 1935, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1935. आंसर इज डी. Next question, number 162. Which of the following statement about Gandhi Ji's Hind Swaraj written in 1909 is or are true? Number 1. Hind Swaraj offers a civilizational concept of the Indian nation. Yes or no? Yes. Now the Hind Swaraj was effectively a critique of the modern Western civilization and presented favorable arguments towards the Indian civilization and the Indian nation. ठीक है, तो पहला वाला सही है. How has he described the Indian civilization? One which was assimilative in nature, one which was constituted of a complex history in which various streams were present. All of them had come to India and got assimilated into the Indian culture. So ऐसा उन्होंने interpret किया है. Second, Hind Swaraj states that parliamentary democracy was necessary for the amelioration of sufferings of Indians. Is this correct? No. He condemned parliamentary democracy because it did not represent the general will of the people, rather it simply represented the general will of the political parties who were nothing but pressure groups who were working to protect the interests of the elites. So if you want real democracy, तो किस तरह की democracy होनी चाहिए? स्वराज, स्वदेशी वाली democracy, village level democratic association should be in charge. So this is incorrect. Third, Hind Swaraj argues that industrial capitalism was necessary for the amelioration of the sufferings of Indians. Also incorrect. So in the Hind Swaraj, Mahatma Gandhi has condemned anything which comes from the modern West, including parliamentary democracy and industrial capitalism. He blames industrial capitalism for the moral degradation of human beings. Rather, what does he envisage? Self-sufficient village economies. ठीक है, so क्या पूछा है यहाँ पे, कौन सा ट्रू है? आंसर इज A, one only. Hind Swaraj was a book written by him in Gujarati in 1909. He had gone to England और इंग्लैंड से वापस आ रहे थे स्टीमशिप पर साउथ अफ्रीका. उस दौरान उन्होंने किताब लिखी थी. लेटर इट वाज ट्रांसलेटेड इनटू इंग्लिश आल्सो. 1910 में अंग्रेजों ने इसको बैन भी कर दिया था. Because he had deeply criticized not only the modern Western society but also Western colonialism. So he had presented arguments in favor of Indian Swaraj. That is why he had it had been banned. Number 163. Which of the following characteristics does not describe the Khilafat movement? A. Mahatma Gandhi sought to link it to the non-cooperation movement. Is this correct? This is correct, and he finally did it as well. It was from the platform of the All India Congress Khilafat Committee that the non-cooperation movement was launched. Right. Second, it was led by Muhammad Ali Jauhar and Shaukat Ali. ठीक है, these were the Ali brothers, the two most prominent leaders of the Khilafat movement. C, it demanded that the Turkish Sultan must retain control over Muslim sacred spaces in the erstwhile Ottoman Empire. This is also correct. So the Khilafat movement was a pan-Islamist movement. What is a pan-Islamist movement? One which is prevalent in most or all of the countries having a sizable Muslim population. In defense of which institution? The Khilafat. What is the Khilafat? Office of the Caliph, right? English में इसको Caliphate बोलते हैं. So this issue had become relevant in the backdrop of the First World War. Why? The Ottoman Empire was locked in a deadly struggle against the Allies during the First World War. Alliance बना था किसके किसके बीच में? Germany, Austria, Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, and they were fighting against the British, French, Russians and the Americans, right? So these Muslims, it's also the Muslims of India, had come out in defense of the Ottoman Sultan, who was also the Caliph. What is the Caliph? He was considered to be the religious as well as political leader of the entire Islamic community by a majority of Muslims. ठीक है, तो उनके डिफेंस में आए थे. One of their demands was that the Turkish Sultan must be left with sufficient territories to look after his government, to protect the interests of Muslims across the world, and that he should be allowed to retain control over the holy Islamic sites at Mecca and Jerusalem, Medina, etc. ठीक है. So, and fourth one, it was not supported by the Congress. This is incorrect. It was supported by the Congress. 4th September 1920, the special session at Nagpur, Congress adopted the non-cooperation resolution, and then in December 1928, once again endorsed the non-cooperation resolution. So this is D. Next, number 164. Which of the following acts introduced diarchy in the provinces? Government of India Act 1919. What do you understand by the word diarchy? Di का मतलब two, archy का मतलब rule. So it was the rule of two. In the context of the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, what does the term diarchy mean? गवर्नर जनरल का इसमें कोई रोल नहीं है. अच्छा, एक किस फील्ड में लगाया जाता था? एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव फील्ड में या लेजिस्लेटिव फील्ड में? Administrative field में, not in the legislative sphere, right? Where was it introduced? At the central level or the provincial level? At the provincial level. कैसे इसको implement किया गया? By dividing the subjects of administration at the provincial level into two lists, a reserved list and a transferred list. Who was head of state at the provincial level? Governor, provincial governors. ठीक है. नाउ गवर्नर्स के ही नेम और सील के अंदर स्टेट के सारे एग्जीक्यूटिव एक्शंस होंगे. इट इज सिंपली अ मैटर ऑफ वेदर द गवर्नर वुड बी रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू द लेजिस्लेचर और नॉट. तो इन द रिजर्व्ड सब्जेक्ट्स मैटर ही वाज नॉट रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू द लेजिस्लेचर. इन द ट्रांसफर्ड सब्जेक्ट्स मैटर ही वाज मेड रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू द इलेक्टेड काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स. ठीक है, तो दो लिस्ट बनाई गई, रिजर्व्ड एंड ट्रांसफर्ड. The reserved list had subjects of greater importance such as finance, police, irrigation, power, etc. While subjects of lesser importance or those which were dependent upon subjects of the reserved list were given to the transferred list. ठीक है, such as health, education, agriculture, industry. In this form, a system of partially responsible government was introduced at the provinces. ये system of diarchy कब तक चला? 1935 तक, when it was abolished at the provincial level, but it was not completely abolished. इसको यहाँ से खत्म करके सेंटर में लगा दिया गया। तो सेंटर में भी अब दो तरह की लिस्ट बनेंगी। इज दिस मच क्लियर? अच्छा, व्हाट वाज द बेसिक ब्रिटिश डिजाइन बिहाइंड दिस? इंडियंस क्या डिमांड कर रहे थे सिंस द वेरी बिगनिंग? रिस्पॉन्सिबल गवर्नमेंट मांग रहे थे। व्हाट हैड बीन द ब्रिटिश जस्टिफिकेशन नॉट टू इंट्रोड्यूस रिस्पॉन्सिबल गवर्नमेंट? क्या बोल रहे थे इंडियंस को बार बार? यू आर नॉट फिट टू रूल योर सेल्फ, इंडियंस आर नॉट फिट टू रूल, अभी आप लोगों को पता नहीं है, आता नहीं है, राइट? सो दिस वॉज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय देम फर्स्टली to maintain a British control over all of the important subjects of administration at the provincial level. ठीक है, जो भी इंडियन मिनिस्टर्स के पास मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं, all of them are either of lesser importance or they are completely dependent upon one or the other subjects. For example, health और education के लिए फाइनेंस चाहिए, एग्रीकल्चर के लिए इरिगेशन चाहिए, इंडस्ट्री के लिए पावर चाहिए. सो दीज आर अल्टीमेटली गोइंग टू फेल टू डिलीवर. जो इंडियन मिनिस्टर्स हैं, दे विल नॉट बी एबल टू fulfill their mandate, fulfill their remit. And ऐसे में the British could very conveniently blame whom? The Indian ministers. Once again to argue that look, हमने तो आपको power दिया, but you are unfit to rule, and you have proved this experimentation, proved with this experimentation that you are actually unfit to rule. तो जो हम बोल रहे थे वो सही बोल रहे थे. Clear? So this was the idea. ये clear है? ठीक है. Next question, number 165. What was or were the formative influences on the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi? Number 1, Gandhi ji was influenced by the 18th century Pranami sect that advocated the unity of all faiths. Is this correct? This is correct. Now, the Pranami sect in the 18th century was prevalent in several parts of Western India. Mahatma Gandhi's own mother was a close adherent of this sect, and his religious ideas to a large degree were shaped by the influence of this sect. तो महात्मा गांधी के रिलीजियस आइडियाज अगर आपको बताने हो तो क्या क्या मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट आइडियाज हैं उनके? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, दैट गॉड एंड ट्रूथ आर वन एंड दी same. So if you want to follow the path of God, simply walk on the path of truth. You'll automatically do that. Second, he argued that the spirit or soul of a religion is more important than its body or form, right? So he argued that the foundational values of all the major religions are one and the same, such as love, sympathy, concern for others, kindness, humanism, etc. They are more important than the practice of the religion. कि कौन सा रिचुअल परफॉर्म करना है, कहाँ पे पिलग्रिमेज जाना है, कब आपको फास्ट करना है, इस सब का कोई एक्चुअल मीनिंग नहीं होता है. This is more important. And third, he believed that the universal truth of all religions is one and the same. So no one religion can claim to be morally superior or ideologically superior to the other. So in this case, would Mahatma Gandhi favor the idea of religious conversion? करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे? नहीं करेंगे. So he simply felt that these religions were different paths to reach the same objective. So बार बार आपको रास्ता चेंज करने से भगवान नहीं मिलने वाले हैं. So he advocated against religious conversion. ये क्लियर है? ठीक है. Second, Gandhi ji was influenced by the idea of the Theosophists. This is also correct. While living in London, he came into contact with the British Theosophists, such as, or Theosophists who had settled in Britain, such as Madam H.P. Blavatsky, Annie Besant, Colonel Olcott, etc. And their admiration for the ancient culture and ancient Indian religions and faiths also played a very important role in familiarizing Mahatma Gandhi with the value of the ancient Indian past. Okay, so he was also deeply influenced by their ideas. Third, Gandhiji was an admirer of the writings of romantics like Wordsworth. Is this correct? This is incorrect. Mahatma Gandhi was a great admirer of humanitarian authors such as Leo Tolstoy, John Ruskin, Henry David Thoreau, etc. ठीक है? So which of these are correct? A, 1 and 2 only. Number 166. In the elections to the provincial legislatures in 1937 in British India, number 1, only about 10 to 12% of the population had the right to vote. Is this correct? This is correct. The provincial elections of 1937 were held under the aegis of which newly enacted legislation? Government of India Act 1935. That had provided for an expanded electorate but still a limited franchise, limited adult franchise. There were strict educational and property based qualifications, making roughly only 10 to 12% of the population eligible to vote. तो पहला वाला सही है. Second, the untouchables had no right to vote. Is this correct? This is incorrect. ऐसा कोई restriction नहीं था. Third, the Congress won an absolute majority in 5 out of the 11 provinces. This is correct. Won an absolute majority. So there were total of 11 provinces. क्या क्या? पंजाब, सिंध, NWFP, Bengal, Assam, United Provinces, Central Provinces, Bihar, Odisha, Bombay and Madras. These 5 were Muslim majority provinces, while these 6 were Hindu majority provinces. The Congress was able to secure an absolute majority in 5 of the 6 Hindu majority provinces, all of them except for Bombay. So it got an absolute majority in UP, CP, Bihar, Odisha and Madras. Later, it also formed coalition governments in Bombay, NWFP and Assam. तो कांग्रेस की गवर्नमेंट्स कितने प्रोविंसेस में बनी? टोटल ऑफ 8 प्रोविंसेस, लेकिन एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी कितने में मिली थी? 5 में मिली थी. बचे कौन कौन? पंजाब, सिंध एंड बंगाल. In Punjab, the government was formed by the Unionist Party. In Sindh, the Sindh United Party, and in Bengal by the Krishak Praja Party. All of them were regional parties. मुस्लिम लीग का परफॉर्मेंस कैसा था इस वाले इलेक्शन में? एक्सट्रीमली पुअर, कहीं पे नामो निशान नहीं था उनका. ठीक. फोर्थ, द मुस्लिम लीग वन मोर देन 80% ऑफ द सीट्स रिजर्व्ड फॉर मुस्लिम्स. इज दिस करेक्ट? Was incorrect. It was not able to win many seats. Its performance was quite lackluster in 1937. तो बताना है कौन कौन से सही हैं. Which of these is are correct? 1 and 3 only. C. Number 167. With reference to Congress Socialist Party, consider the following statements. Number 1. It advocated the boycott of British goods and evasion of taxes. It wanted to establish the dictatorship of the proletariat. It advocated separate electorate for minorities and oppressed classes. Which of these is or are correct? So, Congress Socialist Party established in 1934 at Bombay with Acharya Narendra Dev as president and J.P. Narayan as secretary. It is also known as the left within the Congress. Although it was a proponent of the leftist or socialist ideology, it had rejected the Marxist idea of blood revolution. Rather, they belonged to the Fabian persuasion of socialism. So they were Fabian socialists. How are Fabians different from scientific socialists or Marxists? They believe that democratic means must be used to look after the interests of the working classes, that is the workers and peasants. Marxists क्या बोलते हैं? That democratic means are never going to succeed because all of the democratic tools and the state which is supposed to enforce them are all bourgeois instruments. They are middle class instruments. तो हमेशा एक किसको फेवर करेंगे? Haves को करेंगे over the have nots, right? And therefore the Marxists believe only in the effectiveness of a blood revolution to overthrow the bourgeois state and establish a dictatorship of the proletariat, which could then work to redistribute the means of production among the working classes until there is a classless and stateless society. ठीक है? तो अब ये बताओ, did they want to establish a dictatorship of the proletariat? No, they did not. As Fabians, their objectives were twofold. क्या क्या objectives? To influence the Congress with socialist ideas and to bring about structural reforms in the condition of workers and peasants. Structural reforms such as the abolition of zamindari, the ensuring the security of tenure, freedom from rural indebtedness, liberating the peasants from the clutches of landlords, providing institutional credit mechanisms for the farmers, improving the living and working conditions, better working wages, better living conditions for the workers, job security, life insurance, etc. for the workers. ये सब की डिमांड कर रहे थे. So did they advocate for the boycott of British goods and evasion of taxes? ऐसा इनका कोई declared agenda नहीं था. It advocated for separate electorate for minorities and oppressed classes? Also incorrect. So they wanted the socialists to influence the Congress so that it shifts more and more towards the left. But जो Congress के major objectives थे, they did not argue with them or challenge them. तो यानी कि separate electorates पर they would support the Congress. Which of these are correct? None of them are correct. No, they do not support the idea of stateless society. वो मार्क्सिस्ट या फिर साइंटिफिक सोशलिस्ट करते हैं. ठीक है, स्टेटलेस सोसाइटी. क्या? No, Nehru and Bose never joined the Congress Socialist Party. They belong to the same persuasion, and it was because of this that later on the Congress Socialist Party leaders became frustrated with Jawaharlal Nehru, क्योंकि एक साइड पे नेहरू बार बार बोल रहे थे that I am a firebrand socialist, but he was never actually joining the Congress Socialist Party. So that was a major reason for the break which ultimately emerged between them after independence. So for example, बाद में जनता पार्टी का फॉर्मेशन हुआ, जेपी नारायण ने किया. That was an opposition against the Congress, because by that point it had become clear that Nehru is never going to join the Congress Socialist Party or never going to seriously advocate for the kinds of reforms that that party was asking for. Next question 168. Which among the following was the reason for the resignations of the Indian ministries in all provinces in the year 1939? A. The government refused to act as a constitutional head. Governors refused to act as constitutional heads. B. The center did not provide the required financial help to the provinces. C. Governor General converted Indian administration from federal to unitary because of the beginning of the Second World War. Or D. India was declared a party to the Second World War without the consent of the provincial government. D. India was declared party to the Second World War without consent of the provincial governments. When did the Second World War break out? 1939 September. In the same month, who was the Governor General of India? Linlithgow. He declared war on Germany on India's behalf. All of the Congress ministries resigned en masse. कहाँ कहाँ पर Congress ministries थी? In 8 out of the 11 British Indian provinces. अभी नाम देखे थे हमने. And they had done so because they had not been consulted. ठीक है. इसको सेलिब्रेट किया बाद में मुस्लिम लीग ने एज द डे ऑफ डिलीवरेंस, यौम निजात. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन नंबर 169. The Deepavali declaration issued in the year 1929 was related to communal problem, dominion status, labor leaders, or untouchability. The answer is B. Dominion status. 1929 the Secretary of State for India क्या नाम था? Sorry, the Governor General क्या नाम था? Lord Irwin. He made a famous declaration on the day of Diwali that India would be declared dominion status in the upcoming set of constitutional reforms. तो इसके पहले साइमन कमीशन ऑलरेडी आ चुका था. Anti-Simon agitation was going on. There was a great degree of nationalist dissent, and in order to diffuse the nationalist anger and take control of the situation, the Deepavali declaration was made. Ultimately, इस declaration का कुछ हुआ? No, it was simply a stopgap measure in order to lull the Indians into a false sense of security, so that इनका जो movement चल रहा था उसमें से हवा निकल जाए. Number 170. Which of the following reasons influenced Mahatma Gandhi not to launch a mass struggle in 1939? Number 1. Corruption and indiscipline in the Congress organization. Number 2. Decrease in influence among the peasants. Number 3. Lack of resources. So, why was there cause for a mass struggle in 1939? Second World War start हो गया था. India had forcibly and unilaterally been made part of the British war effort. Congress ministries had resigned. Everybody expected Congress दोबारा से civil disobedience movement शुरू करेगा. महात्मा गांधी ruled it out for several reasons. किस तरह के reasons? First of all, he believed that many of the Congress men who were serving as ministers in the Congress ministries, they were actually involved in corrupt activities. Plus, indiscipline within the Congress was also high. The kind of grassroots capabilities that were required to mobilize the masses and sustain a mass movement from the Congress front, that was not present. So, he had ruled it out. Second, there was a decrease in influence among the peasants as well. Why was this? Because of the rise of other leftist outfits such as the All India Kisan Sabha, which in the beginning was a close ally of the Congress, but between 1936, that is its formation, and 1939, there had been a greater emerging rift between them. Communists were also having a great degree of influence on the peasants, but the communists were against a Congress-led mass movement at this point of time, because they were getting all their directions from Russia, and Russia did not want any problems for the British during the Second World War. Both of them were allied at this point of time. And third, there was a lack of resources also. So funds were needed for nationalist activity, which were also not present. And this became a major cause for a rift between Mahatma Gandhi and another prominent Congress leader. Kaun? Subhash Chandra Bose. He felt that the outbreak of a war was a golden opportunity for the Indians to rise against the British and ultimately liberate India. And in his eyes, Mahatma Gandhi was missing this opportunity. There was an increasing sense of distance and frustration, finally leading to the breach within the Congress. Subhash Chandra Bose ने बाद में जाके क्या बनाया? Forward block, right? तो कौन कौन से सही हैं? All D 1, 2 and 3. Number 171. With reference to the Wardha scheme of basic education 1937, which of the following statements is or are correct? Number 1. Learning through activity is the main principle of this scheme. Number 2. It was based on Gandhi's ideas published in a series of articles in the weekly named Harijan. Number 3. It does not provide free and compulsory education in the mother tongue. वर्धा स्कीम ऑफ बेसिक एजुकेशन के बारे में आपको कुछ फैक्ट्स पता होने चाहिए. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, it was based on the Gandhian idea of नई तालीम, right? Gandhi ji had put forward his ideas about education in a series of articles published in his magazine Harijan from 1932 onwards, and these articles became the basis for the Congress-led Wardha scheme of basic education, which was brought out in 1937 under the chairmanship of Dr. Zakir Hussain. Now, Mahatma Gandhi's main focus had been on learning through activity. His idea was that the younger minds among Indians must be liberated from the ideological domination of the British, for which they have to prepare themselves for service to the nation. And किस तरह का service? Manual labor, right? So his idea was that along with book learning, there should be a healthy vocational training course as well. Okay. Under this scheme, between the ages of 6 and 11, every child should receive free and compulsory education. तो पहले दो इसमें सही हैं, last one is incorrect. Correct answer is B, 1 and 2 only. Number 172. With reference to खुदाई खिदमतगार movement, consider the following statement. तो खुदाई खिदमतगार movement किसका movement था? खान अब्दुल गफ्फार खान. Where? NWFP. What did it stand for? It began as a social service organization, but later transformed into a political movement for the tribal unity of the Pashtuns and the larger idea of Indian independence. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan resonated quite deeply with the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi. Therefore, he was also known as the Frontier Gandhi. During the civil disobedience movement, his organization Khudai Khidmatgar launched the civil disobedience movement at Peshawar. तो जो पश्तून एरियाज हैं वहां पर. ठीक है. Now let us look at these statements. Number 1, it was a non-violent movement against British occupation led by Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan in the Northwest Frontier Province. This is correct. Second statement, the movement was also known as the Red Shirt or Surkh Posh movement, as the volunteers used to wear red shirts. This is also correct. तो सुर्ख का मतलब होता है लाल, पोश इज कपड़े. रेड शर्ट्स और सुर्ख पोश दे वर नोन एज, ऑल्सो नोन एज दी सर्वेंट्स ऑफ गॉड सोसाइटी एंड खुदाई खिदमतगार. ठीक है. तो है एक ही ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, नाम इसके अलग अलग हैं. एंड इन देयर चॉइस ऑफ कॉस्ट्यूम दे वर इंस्पायर्ड बाय the young Italy movement of Mazzini, also known as the red shirts. They also used to wear red shirts. So which of these are correct? Both 1 and 2 are correct. Number 173. Which of the following statement or statements regarding the Delhi Manifesto is or are not correct? Number 1, it included conditions for attending the round table conference. This is correct. The Delhi Manifesto was put forward by the Indian National Congress in November 1929 as a set of conditions which must be fulfilled if the government wanted the Congress to attend the roundtable conference. What were the roundtable conferences? A series of conferences to discuss the findings of the Simon Commission report, ठीक है, and on the basis of that to draft a new constitutional legislation for India. तो अगर इसमें कांग्रेस का पार्टिसिपेशन चाहिए, some conditions would have to be fulfilled. So this पहला वाला statement is correct. Second, it demanded general amnesty for political prisoners. This was one of the demands. Third, it rejected dominion status and demanded complete independence. No. तो यहाँ पे दिल्ली मैनिफेस्टो में बोला गया that the government should declare that the objective of the round table conference would be to discuss the method in which dominion status would be implemented immediately. तभी कांग्रेस इसको अटेंड करेगा. Did the government respond? No. Therefore, 1929 Poon Swaraj Resolution, 1930 Civil Disobedience. So which of these are not correct? 3. B 3 only. Number 174. With reference to the Government of India Act 1935, consider the following statements. Number 1. The Act divided powers between the center and provinces. Is this correct? So it provided for the creation of how many legislative lists? 3 lists. कौन सी? फेडरल, प्रोविंशियल एंड कॉन्करेंट. ठीक है. So legislative devolution had taken place. Legislative powers were clearly defined of both the center as well as the provinces. Second, the India Council was abolished. This is also correct. This had been a long-standing demand of the Indian nationalists. What was the India Council? It was a council of 15 members, 15 people who were assisting the Secretary of State for India in England. Secretary of State for India was the highest authority responsible for overseeing the empire in India. He was a member of the British cabinet but was not responsible to the British Parliament. Rather, he had his own independent council. He worked on their aid and advice. So, nationalists क्या demand कर रहे थे? That abolish this India Council and make the Secretary of State responsible to the British Parliament. This was finally done in 1935. Which of these are correct? Both 1 and 2. Number 175. Which of the following statements about princely states in India is not correct? Number 1. The British government declared that states were free to join either India or Pakistan or remain independent. This is correct. कौन से वाले प्लान में? माउंटबैटन प्लान में. ठीक है. B. The decision to join either India or Pakistan or remain independent was left not to the people of the princely states but to the princely rulers. This is also correct. So, कोई democratic exercise नहीं होगा. It would depend on the will of the princes themselves. Third, the ruler of Travancore first decided to remain independent. Yes. So, Travancore turned out to be one of the more problematic princely states when it came to the entire process of merger of the princely states into the Indian Union. यहाँ का ruler, he was depending on the aid and advice of his Diwan Prime Minister. कौन? C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer. C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer was also in negotiations with the British government, home government of Britain. If you allow us to have an independent status, we are going to supply you with the rich plutonium और monazite sand जो कि यहाँ पे बहुत अच्छे quantity में मिलता था. And fourth, the state of Travancore finally joined India through a plebiscite. This is incorrect. So there was a great degree of uproar when the Diwan made his intention not to sign the instrument of accession public. ठीक है, यहाँ पे एक revolt भी हुआ in Travancore, Punapra Valayar revolt. The Congress, Sardar Patel took advantage of this. जब revolt हो रहा था, somebody came, an unidentified man came and beat the Diwan brutally, and from the hospital itself he declared his intention to sign the instrument. So correct answer है D. Number 176. The basis of the failed Gandhi Jinnah talks of 1944 was Wavell Plan, Partition of India, Rajgopalachari formula, Cabinet Mission proposals. राजगोपालाचारी फॉर्मूला. वेवेल प्लान किस ईयर में आया? 1945. पार्टीशन ऑफ इंडिया, कैबिनेट मिशन, बचा क्या? राजा जी फॉर्मूला और सीआर फॉर्मूला और दी राजगोपालाचारी फॉर्मूला. किस चीज का फॉर्मूला था? To resolve a constitutional deadlock that had emerged between the positions of the Congress and the Muslim League in the aftermath of the Quit India movement. Quit India movement का biggest effect क्या पड़ा? It had become clear to all parties involved, Indians as well as the British, that the days of the British in India are numbered. Sooner or later they will have to leave India, transfer power and go back. ठीक है, तो अब the issues regarding transfer of power they became relevant. There were 3 questions on which the League and Congress clashed against each other. कौन कौन से 3 questions थे? 3 constitutional questions. Number 1, the nature of the union, whether India shall remain a single union or shall it be divided into 2 separate unions, an Indian union and a Pakistan union. Second, the nature of the federation, that in case India was to remain a single union, should it have a strong center or should it be a federal system with strong states and a weak center? And third question was on the question of minority representation, at who is the legitimate representative of Muslims? Muslim League है या फिर is Congress also a legitimate representative of Muslims? ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे आपको ये तो आइडिया लग रहा होगा कि कांग्रेस क्या बोल रहा होगा, मुस्लिम लीग क्या बोल रहा होगा. कांग्रेस क्या बोलेगा? वी वांट अ सिंगल यूनियन और 2 यूनियंस? सिंगल यूनियन. मुस्लिम लीग, हमको पाकिस्तान चाहिए, 2 यूनियंस चाहिए. कांग्रेस क्या बोलेगा? डू वी वांट अ स्ट्रॉन्ग सेंटर और वीक सेंटर? स्ट्रॉन्ग सेंटर. Is Congress going to accept that it is not the legitimate representative of Muslims? No. It said that it is an all India secular party and it is the legitimate representative of Muslims. Muslim League क्या बोल रहा था? That Congress is a caste Hindu party and only the Muslim League has the right to represent the Muslim interests. ठीक? Now, in order to resolve this constitutional deadlock, several efforts were made in the coming years. कुछ एफर्ट्स पार्टी लेवल पे हुए, कुछ एफर्ट्स ब्रिटिश ने किए और कुछ एफर्ट्स इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे भी हुए. इंडिविजुअल लेवल पर इन 1944 एंड 1945 2 एफर्ट्स वर मेड. इन 1944 द सीआर फॉर्मूला, सी राजगोपालाचारी फॉर्मूला, एंड इन 1945 द देसाई लियाकत पैक्ट. सीआर फॉर्मूला में क्या क्या सजेस्ट किया गया? दैट both the Congress and Muslim League should join hands and jointly demand complete independence or Poorn Swaraj. Second, shall the government offer both of them should join the interim government. Thirdly, the question of partition would not be decided until after the complete transfer of power. So, The transfer of power would have to take place before partition. And how would the issue of partition be decided? Through plebiscite in all the Muslim majority provinces. And lastly, even in the case of a vote in favor of partition, certain essential services would remain common, such as common defense, foreign policy, currency, and communication. Okay? Now, this proposal, this formula became the background for a high-level meeting between Mahatma Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Gandhi Jinnah talks of 1944. ठीक, महात्मा गांधी ने इस पे अपनी सहमति दे दी कि हमें ये मंजूर है. जिन्ना ने एक कंडीशन लगाया. What was the condition that he imposed? That only the Muslims in the Muslim majority provinces should have the right to participate in this plebiscite. The other residents of those provinces should not be voting. What was the justification, ideological justification क्या था? Demand for Pakistan, is it a Muslim demand or is it an all India demand? Muslim demand. So since it is a Muslim demand, only Muslims should determine whether they want a separate Pakistan or not. Was it acceptable to Mahatma Gandhi? No. Therefore, talks failed. Clear? Number 177. Which of the following statements about the Cripps mission is not correct? Number 1. The mission offered the formation of a constitution making body after the war. Yes or no? So it provided for the setting up of a constituent assembly after the war. Second, the mission proposed that the participation of princely states in the constitution making process. Yes, it also provided for the participation of princely states. कैसे? Through indirect election or through nomination? Through nomination. C. The mission offered dominion status after the war. Yes, it offered dominion status after the war with a full freedom for Indians to determine the nature of their future relationship with the Commonwealth. And D. Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel represented the Congress to negotiate with the mission. This is incorrect. Congress nominated two official negotiators. One of them was Jawaharlal Nehru, the other was not Sardar Patel. कौन थे? मौलाना आजाद. ठीक है? So answer is D. D is incorrect. 178. Which of the following was or were the features of the Quit India movement? Number 1. From the very beginning it was a rural revolt. No, it had started as a spontaneous mass uprising in the cities. Later it spread to the villages after the outbreak of violence in North India. Patna etc. में violence शुरू हुआ, वहां से villages में फैल गया. So this is incorrect. Number 2, it was essentially a moderate movement. Incorrect. Why? Because the movement was characterized by the overwhelming atmosphere of violence. Violence was used on a large scale by both sides. Moderates ऐसा करेंगे कभी? नहीं. Third, it was marked by the unprecedented use of violence. This is correct. And fourth, it was marked by acute state repression. This is also correct. So there was an unending cycle of violence and counter violence. क्या बताना है कौन से फीचर्स थे? तो आंसर इज 3 and 4 only. Let's look at the options. C, 3 and 4 only. 179. Who among the following was not a member of the cabinet mission. पैथिक लॉरेंस था, जॉन साइमन नहीं था. जॉन साइमन वॉज द चेयरमैन ऑफ द साइमन कमीशन. कब आया था ये? 1927 में. The other two members of the cabinet mission were Stafford Cripps and A.V. Alexander. So the cabinet mission was a 3-member mission of the British cabinet which arrived in India in March 1946 to devise a plan for the transfer of power and to set up a constituent assembly. Next question 180. With reference to the cabinet mission, which of the following statements is or are correct? Number 1, it recommended a federal government. Yes or no? Yes. कितने लेवल का फेडरल गवर्नमेंट? 3-tier फेडरल गवर्नमेंट. एक फेडरल गवर्नमेंट, एक ग्रुप स्टेज का गवर्नमेंट और एक प्रोविंशियल गवर्नमेंट. So this is correct. 2, it enlarged the powers of the Indian courts. ऐसा कोई इसमें प्रोविजन नहीं था. 3, it provided for more Indians in the ICS. No such provision. What were the important provisions of the cabinet mission plan? Number 1, the idea of partition was rejected. Number 2, it provided for the constitution of a constituent assembly to draft the constitution of India as a whole. ठीक है? Consisting of members both from the provinces as well as princely states. Members from provinces would be indirectly elected by provincial legislatures, and members from princely states would be nominated. Third, it provided for the grouping of the provinces into how many groups? 3 groups or 3 sections, A, B and C. ग्रुप ए में कौन से प्रोविंसेस होंगे? हिंदू मेजॉरिटी प्रोविंसेस. ग्रुप बी में मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी प्रोविंसेस ऑफ द वेस्ट. कौन कौन से? पंजाब, सिंध एंड NWFP. एंड ग्रुप सी में मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी प्रोविंसेस ऑफ द ईस्ट. व्हाट वाज द पर्पस फॉर ग्रुपिंग? To draft group constitutions and to draft provincial constitutions. ठीक है? So each group will have its own constitution in which members of that particular group are going to sit jointly to draft that constitution without interference from any of the other groups. ठीक है? Similarly, इंडिविजुअल प्रोविंसेस के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस कौन बनाएंगे? द मेंबर्स ऑफ ऑल द स्टेट्स इन दैट ग्रुप. ठीक है? ऐसा नहीं है कि इंडिविजुअल प्रोविंस के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इंडिविजुअल ग्रुप्स ड्राफ्ट करेंगे. एंड फोर्थ, इट प्रोवाइडेड फॉर यू कैन से an appraisal of the constitution after 10 years of its operation. ठीक है? So once the constitution so drafted, union constitution so drafted enters into force, after 10 years it can be examined by each and every state, at which stage they will have the opportunity to reject the constitution. ठीक है? So you can say ratification after 10 years. These were the important provisions of the cabinet mission plan. Clear है? तो करेक्ट आंसर क्या है इसका? A, 1 only. Number 181. When was an interim government formed under Jawaharlal Nehru? September 1946. तो कैबिनेट मिशन आया कब था इंडिया में? March 1946. Cabinet mission plan was announced in May 1946. It was presented to both the Congress as well as Muslim League कि आपको ये acceptable है या नहीं है. ठीक. Initially both of them agreed. क्यों? Because it was in accordance with their wishes. कांग्रेस का सबसे बड़ा कंसर्न एड्रेस हो गया था कि पार्टीशन को रिजेक्ट कर दिया गया है. मुस्लिम लीग को पार्टीशन का डिजाइन इसके अंदर दिख रहा था. क्यों? आफ्टर 10 years the constitution would come up for reappraisal, then they could reject it. तो आज नहीं बन रहा है, 10 साल डिले से पाकिस्तान बन जाएगा. तो both of them had given their approval. But problem क्या हुआ? That both of them interpreted the plan in their own way. ठीक. कांग्रेस को लगा कि क्लॉज ऑफ ग्रुपिंग जो है दैट इज नॉट कंपल्सरी. मुस्लिम लीग को लगा कि ग्रुपिंग क्लॉज कंपल्सरी है. राइट. and they started to clash upon it. Frustrated at the end, finally the governor general, कौन था इस समय गवर्नर जनरल? वेवेल. he invited the congress to come and form the interim government. ठीक है. it was formed on the 2nd of September 1946 under whom? Jawaharlal Nehru. but later on Muslim League also joined it. Number 182. Between the 15th of August 1947, when India became free, and the 26th of January 1950, when she declared herself a democratic sovereign republic, the government of India functioned under the provisions of which of these acts? Government of India Act 1935, the Indian Independence Act 1947, the Indian Provisional Constitution Order of 1947, or none of the above? Answer is A, the Government of India Act 1935. The provisions of this act were slightly modified to act as the interim constitution till the actual constitution comes in force. Number 183. With reference to Indian history, members of Constituent Assembly from the provinces were directly elected by the people of those provinces, nominated by the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League, elected by the provincial legislative assemblies, or selected by government for their expertise in constitutional matters. Elected by provincial legislative assemblies. So cabinet mission plan के basis पर इनका election हुआ. Next, 184. With reference to the Desai-Liaquat Pact, which of the following statements is or are correct? Number 1, both parties agreed for 30% reservation of seats for minorities, and number 2, an equal number of persons nominated by the Congress and League in the central legislature. बताना है कौन सा सही है? Is the first one correct? First one is incorrect. This was a pact between Bhula Bhai Desai, the leader of the Congress in the central legislature, and Liaquat Ali Khan, the deputy leader of the Muslim League in the central legislature. ठीक है. This was another attempt to resolve the constitutional deadlock. तो इन दोनों ने मीटिंग करके दो चीजें बोली. At first of all, we are going to nominate equal number of members in the central legislature. कांग्रेस एंड मुस्लिम लीग के equal members होंगे central legislature में. ठीक. दूसरी चीज इन्होंने बोली that at least 20% of seats in the legislature would be reserved for minorities. तो पहला वाला गलत हो जाता है. 30% नहीं है, 20% है. Second one is correct. Was this pact successful in resolving that dispute? No. क्यों? Once again because of Jinnah. Jinnah ने क्या condition लगाया आपकी बार? That I am ready to agree all the provisions on the condition that the Congress should not nominate any Muslims. Why? Because the Congress, Jinnah wanted the Congress to accept that it was a caste Hindu party and that Muslims were only going to be represented by the Muslim League. तो कौन से सही है? B, 2 only. Number 185. With reference to the Government of India Act 1919, consider the following statement. Number 1. System of diarchy and direct elections were introduced. Is this correct? This is correct. So diarchy किस level पर? At the provinces, and for the first time direct elections. Number 2. The principle of communal representation was abolished. No, it was expanded further. So 1919 में किसको किसको दिया separate electorate? Sikhs, Anglo-Indians and Indian Christians. Number 3, it provided for the establishment of a public service commission. This is correct. Okay? That commission was finally established in 1922. And तो कौन से correct हैं? 1 and 3 only. Answer is B. 185 का B. 186. Consider the following statements regarding the Morley Minto reforms, also known as कौन सा act? The Indian Councils Act 1909. Number 1. The number of members in the Central Legislative Council was raised. Is this correct? Yes. Earlier the number was 16. Now it was raised to 60. This is correct. Number 2. It allowed the provincial legislative councils to have a non-official majority. So this is also correct. Okay? So for the first time in the provinces, there was to be a non-official majority. But was it also a non-elected majority? No, it was a non-official but non-elected majority. This particular act provided for 4 different kinds of legislative members. कौन से? Ex officio, government members, nominated members and elected members. Ex officio members कौन है? The governor generals, the provincial governors, the members of their executive councils, etc. Government members, these are government functionaries who have been nominated to this council, appointed to these councils by the provincial governors and the governor general. Nominated members, these are non-government members who have been nominated by the government. And elected members, those who have been elected indirectly by the local bodies. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पर ये जो दोनों मिला के इनको बोलते हैं non-official members. In 1909, there was a majority of non-official members in the provincial legislature, but overall, the number of elected members was lesser than the number of non-elected members. So there was a non-elected and non-official majority. Okay? So which of these are incorrect? Neither. Answer is D. Neither 1 nor 2. (187) Arrange the following events in their chronological order and select the correct answer from the codes given below. Hunter Commission, Sadler Commission, Woods Dispatch, Sergeant Plan. Hunter Commission which year? 1882. Sadler Commission 1917. Woods Dispatch and Sergeant Plan. ठीक है? तो करेक्ट ऑर्डर क्या हो गया? CABD. कौन सा ऑप्शन है CABD? D. आंसर इज D. CABD. Number 188. The Trade Disputes Act of 1929 provided for A. Participation of workers in the management of industries. ऐसा नहीं है. ये कब प्रोविजन आया? This is part of the directive principles of state policy. ठीक है. Next, arbitrary powers to the management to quell industrial disputes. Also not correct. C. Intervention by British court in the event of a trade dispute. Also incorrect. And D. A system of tribunals and ban on strikes. So this is the correct answer. So it allowed the government to set up trade disputes tribunals to resolve disputes between the workers and industrialists, but at the same time it also outlawed any kind of strikes. This was supposed to have a chilling effect on the growing workers movement in India. It was in protest against this bill that Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt bombed the Central Legislative Assembly. Next, 189. The Indian Famine Code 1883 was prepared by which of these commissions? Hunter Commission, Hartog Commission, Strachey Commission, or Indigo Commission? Strachey Commission. Strachey Commission established in 1878 after the Deccan famine during the Governor Generalship of Lytton, and submitted its report in 1880. However, Lytton did not take any further action. कोई code नहीं बनाया. It was only during the Governor Generalship of Ripon that in 1883 the famine code, based on the recommendations of this Strachey Commission, was brought out. What were the important provisions of this famine code? कि famine को prevent करना है तो क्या करना चाहिए? In case of crop failure, the collection of revenue should be automatically suspended. The government should work on improving the irrigation infrastructure. Affected regions में priority basis पर क्या करना है? Food और fodder का supply पहुंचाना है. And so that people are able to purchase goods in times of shortage, क्या करना है? When crops have failed, they have to be given alternative sources of income. So the entire economy has to be made more robust. The vulnerability of farmers has to be reduced. Number 190. Which one of the following statements is not correct about the Khilafat movement? Number 1, it was led by Maulana Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Yes, it demanded that Turkish Sultan must retain. ये कर चुके हैं ना हम? आंसर इसका डी है. डी. रिपीट हो गया ये क्वेश्चन. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Which among the following struggles based on Gandhi's philosophy of Satyagraha involved the industrial working class? Ahmedabad mill strike. It involved the mill workers of Ahmedabad. Answer is C. Next, 192. The creation of federal court in India was advocated by which of the following acts or commissions? The Government of India Act 1935. It had provided for the establishment of a federal court of India, which was finally established in 1937. What was the jurisdiction of this court? To hear all the disputes relating to all the cases relating to disputes between the various federating units, center and states, the states among themselves, a group of states against the center, group of states among themselves, etc. Okay? So the answer is C, Government of India Act 1935. Number 193. Match करना है list 1, which is an act or event, with the year in which it took place. So Rowlatt Act 1919. Salt March 1930. Chauri Chaura incident 1922, and second round table conference 1931. So answer is 4312. 4312 A. (194) Which among the following was not the recommendation of the Nehru report? Dominion status, separate electorate, unitary and democratic center, and adult suffrage. Separate electorate. It asked for the abolition of separate electorate and introduction of joint electorates. Number 195. Consider the following events and find the correct chronological order of the events from the code given below. Special session of the Indian National Congress at Calcutta. Kab? September 1920. 4th of September. Demise of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. August 1920, 1st of August 1920. Announcement of peace terms to Turkey, Treaty of Sevres, May 1920. And submission of unanimous report on Jallianwala Bagh massacre by Congress committee. Was April 1920. So Congress submitted its own report because it was dissatisfied with the findings of the Hunter Commission report. Correct answer क्या हो गया? 4, 3, 2, 1. Answer is A. (196). Which one of the following gave reserved seats for depressed classes in the provincial and central legislative councils that were to be voted in by general electorate? Communal Award, Second Roundtable Conference, Pune Pact, or Government of India Act 1935? Answer is Pune Pact. What was the Pune Pact? A pact between Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar had been demanding what? Separate electorates for depressed classes. Had the government accepted this demand? Yes. In 1932, the British Prime Minister James Ramsay MacDonald made the infamous MacDonald Award or Communal Award, and 72 seats in the legislative bodies were to be earmarked as separate electorate constituencies for the depressed classes. Mahatma Gandhi इसके against उन्होंने क्या किया? He went on a fast unto death. Where was he? At the Yerawada jail in Pune, right? And after 21 days of fasting, finally there was an agreement between Dr. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi. What was decided? That separate electorates would not be given to the depressed classes. They would contest in the elections on the basis of joint electorate, but reservation और उनको बढ़ा के मिलेगा. More than twice the number of seats that had been given to them would now be reserved as the depressed classes seats. So answer is C, Pune Pact. Number 197. With reference to the revolutionary nationalism, consider the following statements. Number 1. The Russian Revolution and the success of the young socialist state in consolidating itself influenced revolutionary nationalism. This is correct, especially with regards to the second wave of revolutionary extremism in India during the 1920s. The younger revolutionaries were deeply influenced by the Bolshevik ideas, and also because of the success of the Russian Revolution, there was a great degree of enthusiasm amongst them that how completely disempowered and marginalized section of Russian workers and peasants had been able to overthrow a deeply entrenched and tyrannical monarchical regime. So they wanted to follow the same example. They were also enthused by the success of the USSR in its early stages. Second, Sachindranath Sanyal's book Bandi Jeevan was an important work which encouraged the revolutionary nationalists to work for the overthrow of the colonial rule. Is this correct? This is also correct. So Sachindranath Sanyal, who had been transported for life for the attack on Hardinge in 1912, had used his time in jail to write Bandi Jeevan, which emerged as a veritable manifesto for revolutionaries later on. Okay? Later, he was freed under the program of amnesty in the backdrop or after the First World War, and he later went on to found the HRA. He in fact also wrote the manifesto of the HRA, and he continued to remain a very prominent ideological influence on the revolutionary ideology. So which of these statements is or are not correct? तो दोनों सही हैं, none of them is not correct. आंसर क्या है? D, neither one nor two. 198. With reference to Rowlatt Satyagraha, which of the following statements is or are correct? Number 1. Rowlatt Satyagraha was based on the recommendations of the Sedition Committee. Yes or no? Yes. This is correct. Number 2. In Rowlatt Satyagraha, Gandhiji tried to utilize the Home Rule League. This is also correct. So Mahatma Gandhi tried to enrobe the members of the Home Rule League as well as the Servants of India Society. दोनों सही हैं. Third, Demonstrations against the arrival of Simon Commission coincided with the Rowlatt Satyagrah. Incorrect. Rowlatt Satyagrah कब हुआ? 1919. Simon Commission कब आया इंडिया में? 1928. It had been appointed in late 1927, arrived in India early 1928. This is incorrect. तो कौन कौन से सही हैं? B, 1 and 2 only. He may have been against the home rule movement, but he also realized that कांग्रेस अभी रेडी नहीं है कोई मास मूवमेंट लॉन्च करने के लिए. दैट इज वाई ही लॉन्च द रॉलेट सत्याग्रह थ्रू द न्यूली क्रिएटेड सत्याग्रह सभा, एंड हियर ही डिपेंडेड ऑन द सर्विसेज ऑफ द सर्वेंट्स ऑफ इंडिया सोसाइटी वॉलंटियर्स एंड ऑल्सो द वॉलंटियर्स हु हैड वर्क ड्यूरिंग द होम रूल मूवमेंट. ये सही. Number 199, regarding Subhash Chandra Bose, consider the following statements. Number 1, Rabindranath Tagore was the political guru of Subhash Chandra Bose. सही है गलत? कौन थे? C.R. Das. So this is incorrect. Number 2, he convened an anti-compromise conference at Ramgarh in 1940. This is correct. Anti-compromise का मतलब we are not going to compromise with the British, and for that he made an alliance with the All India Kisan Sabha. Third, Subhash Chandra Bose gave the famous slogan Jai Hind from the Free India Center, Germany. This is also correct. He had travelled to Germany after escaping from home arrest, and there he had met Hitler, and with his help he had established the Free India Center and the Free India Army, Free India Legion, and gave the slogan Jai Hind. So which of these are correct? C, 2 and 3 only. Last question, number 200. Who among the following was not associated with the Kakori conspiracy case? Ram Prasad Bismil थे? Rajin Lahiri? Also Ashfaqullah Khan? Yes. Kakori case क्या था? It was a case of a train robbery to loot government cash by prominent members of which organization? The HRA. ठीक है. Surya Sen was the leader of revolutionaries at Chittagong in 1930 and had given effect to the Chittagong armory raid. So answer is D, Surya Sen. ठीक है. So that is it when it comes to the modern history RTFQ. If we have an opportunity later and if you guys want, तो हम और questions भी discuss कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. Any doubts regarding today's discussion? नहीं? All right. Online students, let me come to you. मैराथन सेशन ऑन मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री देखेंगे बाद में. बाइकैमरलिज्म एंड डायरकी अलग है. यस, बाइकैमरलिज्म एंड डायरकी आर डिफरेंट थिंग्स. Bicameralism is the idea of a legislative body having two houses, an upper and a lower house, and diarchy means rule of two. All right. Any doubts, students? Online students, कोई doubts तो नहीं है?